care about me.
I do care.
In what way? You don't care about me.
Yes, I do.
I want to just hurt you and be safe.
Those were the chilling final words from Brandy Johansson's last night alive. For 5 hours straight, Brandy endured emotional and verbal torment at the hands of her husband, Keith Johansson, a man who vowed to protect her, but instead became her captor.
Jesse, you know what? I'll leave it here to haunt you.
The same man who would later claim this entire ordeal was an accident. But what followed would be anything but accidental. Before we begin, please hit that subscribe button. Every click helps uncover the truth behind the darkest stories and gives voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers and be part of this growing community of truth seekers. Thank you. April 7th, 2018, Palm Coast, Florida. It's a Saturday morning in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing seems out of place. That is, until 10:40 a.m., when Flagler County deputies received a frantic 911 call. Keith's voice trembles through the line.
Flagler County 911, where's your emergency?
I was in the shower, and I heard some gunshots.
Okay.
I think that my wife accidentally shot herself.
Okay, are you applying pressure to that wound?
I can't see it. Listen, I got wood floors and I'm sliding. I don't want to risk hurting her or possibly one of the guns going off too.
When officers arrive, it's already too late. Brandy, just 25 years old, is lying lifeless in the bedroom. 2 bullet casings nearby, 2 wounds, 1 rubber bullet in the center of her chest, and 1 live round that ripped through her right breast. A tragic accident? Or something far more sinister? At first glance, Keith appears heartbroken. He sobs. He collapses. He begs officers for answers.
Oh, God!
Shut up, just have it.
Are you serious? Are you sure?
I don't want nobody to ever have a gun in the family again.
At this point, we don't want to freak out any more than what's going on, okay?
What do I do?
I don't know at this point, all right?
Why?
I don't know, that's what we're...
There's no God.
Huh?
There's no God.
His story is scattered, his details inconsistent. He claims he was in the shower when it happened, but officers find no steam, no wet footprints, no towel, no water near Brandy's body. In fact, not a single drop. What's worse, he immediately tries to get his father to remove all the guns from the house. You better get rid of yours. Everybody. I'll take them. That's not the behavior of a devastated husband. That's the behavior of a man with something to hide. As officers begin their investigation, they discover a web of control that Brandy had been trapped in for months, perhaps years. Keith monitored her every move, literally. Cameras were placed throughout the home. Every inch watched, recorded, and archived, not for protection, but for power. But the footage wasn't stored locally. It was sent to Arlo, a third-party company in California. And without a warrant, the videos were out of reach, for now. With time against them and Brandy's body cooling, detectives bring Keith in for questioning. But instead of detectives, a chaplain is the first to speak with him. How are you going to live without her? I don't know. I need God to give me strength. She was perfect. Perfect? That's what Keith says. But the cameras would soon paint a darker portrait. Keith describes their marriage as blissful, loving, the best relationship he's ever had. She had my back. She made breakfast. She did everything for me. But what he fails to mention is that Brandy was isolated. Not allowed to work, not allowed to have friends, not allowed to breathe without permission. She was financially dependent on Keith, emotionally dominated, and physically watched at all times. Even Keith himself admits it. He distrusted her so much that he installed cameras to track her movements after she had a brief online conversation with another man. They didn't do anything physical, but still, it was enough. Enough for him to spiral, enough for Brandy to be stripped of her independence. Enough, perhaps, for murder. There's one person, one little soul, who may have seen it all. 6-year-old Ryland, Brandy's son.
She had a little scream, and then I heard 2 gunshots.
Someone tell you what happened? My dad told me it was just her in the room. that she did it herself. But the scream, that wasn't part of Keith's story. Detectives knew they had to confront him again, and this time they didn't hold back. We asked Ryland. He said he heard his mother scream. Keith's demeanor shifts, his voice rises, his excuses multiply. He lies, he's been known to lie. You can ask his real father, he lies all the time. Now he's blaming a child who, through trembling lips, told the truth. Officers begin to unravel Keith's lies with clinical precision. The house wasn't wet. He wasn't in the shower. The accident couldn't have occurred the way he said it did. Then, a bombshell. Body cam footage reveals Keith feverishly deleting files from his phone. Not calling for help, not reaching out to family, but erasing evidence, most likely the surveillance footage from that morning. But it's too late. The footage has already been saved. And when it finally arrives, detectives brace themselves. What they find is horrifying. Brandy's final hours are caught on tape, her begging for kindness, gasping under the weight of Keith's abuse. "You don't give a F about me." "Yes, I do." "No, you don't." "You know what? I'll leave it here to haunt you." He rages for hours, stripping Brandy of any dignity, mocking her faith, her worth, her very existence. 2 days later, she's dead. Keith Johansson thought he could outsmart everyone. He thought if he cried hard enough, if he lied long enough, and if he blamed enough people, including his own stepson, that the truth would stay buried. He didn't count on the one thing he couldn't delete, the cold, undeniable evidence. But before all of it came crashing down, Keith was still clinging to his version of reality. After Brandy's body was removed from the home and Keith was interrogated, detectives watched him unravel. In those early hours, he was already changing his story, minute by minute. One moment, he was in the shower. The next, he heard a balloon pop. Then it was a suicide. Then maybe she was just moving the guns. I don't know. I wasn't there. I was in the shower, 5 minutes max. But the evidence said otherwise. And when confronted about the inconsistencies, like the cameras being mysteriously offline or the lack of water on the floor, Keith had only one response. "I feel offended." Not remorseful. Not heartbroken. Offended. And then, his excuses turned into paranoia. He began accusing Ryland, a 6-year-old child, of lying. He implied that maybe Ryland didn't just lie, maybe he pulled the trigger. What if it was him? It was a moment that made the detective's skin crawl. How far would this man go to save himself? He wasn't just trying to rewrite history, he was trying to rewrite innocence itself. But the investigation wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. Brandy's body told a story that Keith never expected. Medical examiners confirmed that she was shot twice, once with a rubber bullet and once with a live round. That alone was suspicious. Suicide victims don't often shoot themselves twice. But more damning was the trajectory and distance of the fatal shot. The live round had entered her chest from 3 feet away, a distance that would be impossible in a self-inflicted shooting. And then came another red flag, the presence of methamphetamine in Brandy's system. Had she taken it willingly? Or had Keith given it to her, voluntarily or otherwise? That question may never be fully answered, but it didn't matter, because what came next would destroy any defense Keith still had left. Arlo finally released the security footage from April 5th to April 7th. It showed the true horror of Brandy's final moments. The 5-hour verbal assault, the taunts, the threats, the psychological torment. "You know what? I'll leave it here to haunt you. Maybe one day you will." Those weren't the words of a desperate man. They were the words of a predator basking in power. At one point, Brandy sobs, "I'm alone. Get me out of here." And Keith responds with venom. "You wouldn't give a F if I did. You drove me to think about it, man. My life, yours." Detectives sat in silence, watching the hours unfold, piecing together the lead up to the murder. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment fight. This was calculated control. This was the slow, methodical erosion of a woman's spirit. This was premeditation. But once the evidence started stacking, Keith's strategy shifted again. He now claimed mental illness. He wasn't evil, he said. He was unstable, unwell. He needed help, not punishment. The courts didn't buy it. Keith was declared mentally competent to stand trial. He would face every minute of his actions in front of a judge and a jury. As Keith awaited trial, he made a call to his parents from jail. It started with desperate questions about his legal future. What did the lawyer say? "You're looking at 30 years max, 20 years minimum, no probation." Keith panicked. But then, He did the unthinkable. To my mind's recollection, I didn't do this. But what if it was Ryland? His father paused. Even he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Chief, he's 6 years old. That moment was when the last shred of hope, if there ever was any, for Keith's defense began to crumble. His own parents stopped defending him, his own voice betrayed him, and the courtroom would soon hear it all. On October 26, 2021, the courtroom doors opened, and Keith, calm, cold, collected, took the stand in his own defense. His new story? Self-defense. He claimed Brandy had a weapon. He claimed she swung it at him. He claimed he had no choice but to fire. I grabbed my gun. She pointed hers. She swung. I shot. But prosecutors had the footage, the timeline, the autopsy, the interviews. They had Ryland. They had the truth. And the jury? They needed less than 3 hours to come to a decision. Keith Johansson was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice was served. But no sentence, no conviction, no closing argument can ever restore what Brandy lost. Her life, her freedom, her voice. When the gavel fell and Keith Johansson was sentenced to life without parole, there was no applause, no celebration, no cheers of victory. Because in stories like these, no one wins. Brandy was gone. Ryland had lost his mother. And the scars, emotional, psychological, spiritual, would linger in the lives of everyone she ever touched. What happened after the trial was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of another one, the story of survival. At just 6 years old, Ryland had witnessed something no child should ever experience. He heard the gunshots, he heard his mother scream, and worst of all, he was told to lie about it. Keith had tried to program him to repeat the same story over and over, to say that Brandy had done it to herself. Who told you she was alone? My dad. But Ryland remembered. And when asked gently, he told the truth. She screamed. Then I heard 2 gunshots. After the trial, Ryland was placed with family members. The state provided counseling and trauma therapy. But let's be honest, no amount of therapy can erase what he saw or what he lost. This boy didn't just lose his mom. He lost his home, his sense of safety, his childhood. Brandy's death could have easily been buried as another statistic in a long list of domestic violence cases. But thanks to the bravery of detectives, the persistence of prosecutors, and the courage of her own son, her truth came out. And that truth matters. Brandy Chilinsza Johansson was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a mother, a woman full of dreams. She had wanted a better life, for herself, for Ryland, for their family. What she got instead was isolation, silence, control. I'm alone. Get me out of here. Those words, caught on camera just days before her death, were her cry for help. But help came too late. Brandy's story is a chilling reminder that domestic violence doesn't always look like bruises or broken bones. Sometimes it's hidden behind smiles, behind cameras, behind the illusion of a perfect marriage. Keith controlled her completely, financially, socially, and emotionally, and she had nowhere to run. Brandy's case has since become a point of reference for law enforcement in identifying red flags. Excessive monitoring. Keith installed cameras throughout the house, even in private spaces. Financial dependence. Brandy wasn't allowed to work. Social isolation. She had no friends. No support system. Gaslighting. Keith constantly manipulated her reality, downplaying her feelings and guilt-tripping her for an online conversation. Blaming the victim. Even in death, Keith tried to control the narrative. Most disturbingly, Keith attempted to use religion and victimhood to garner sympathy after her death. His breakdowns, his pleas for spiritual guidance, his prayer with the chaplain, but it was all a performance. Because the cameras never lied. He did. Despite his attempts to destroy footage, manipulate a child, and paint himself as the broken-hearted husband, Keith Johansson failed to silence the truth. And that's the story we remember. Not his lies, not his courtroom testimony, not even his sentence. We remember Brandy. We remember Ryland's bravery. We remember the officers and prosecutors who wouldn't give up. We remember the footage that exposed the darkness. Survival doesn't always mean walking away from the crime scene. Survival is what happens when someone tells the truth, despite the fear. Survival is Ryland whispering. She screamed. Survival is detectives pressing forward even when the story doesn't make sense. Survival is what Brandy's story has become. A light in the darkness, warning others, helping others. If you or someone you know is facing domestic abuse, please speak out. Silence is the tool of the abuser. And stories like Brandy's remind us that the danger often lies behind closed doors, where no one can hear the screams. Until someone listens. In loving memory of Brandy Chilinsza Johansson, 1993 to 2018, a mother, a fighter, a woman who deserved so much more. Thank you for watching and listening to Brandy's story. If you believe her voice matters, if you believe Ryland's courage deserves to be remembered, please subscribe to Mystery in Minutes and share this video.